Is Lightning Bolt better than Fireball? This week, I discuss the most powerful spell at every level in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Hello players and GMs, I am Reese and welcome to another video by Jetpack7. Before we get started, I just want to remind all of you that the beta for Blackstorm Realms has begun. If you want to get a sneak peek at what's going on behind the scenes, as well as give us some constructive criticism on the contents of the book, follow the link in the description to learn how to join. And of course, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every click makes a huge difference in the growth of this channel. Even if it feels like such a small gesture to all of you, it really does help our stuff get seen. So if you like what I'm making, please consider subscribing to the channel. Now lately, I've been getting into discussions about the raw power of certain spells in 5e. There seems to be a good amount of disagreement when it comes to which spell is actually the strongest at every particular level from a relatively objective standpoint. Now obviously certain spells are stronger in certain situations, but which ones would be strongest most of the time? That is what today's video is about. Which spell is the strongest at every level? For this video, I'm going to give an honorable mention, which is basically a spell I think is just extremely powerful, but I couldn't quite justify putting at the very top of the overall power. And then of course, I'll talk about what is, in my opinion, the strongest spell at that particular level. So let's go ahead and jump right into it at the lowest power of spells available, the Kantrips. Now this was an odd one because cantrips are obviously not intended to be massively impactful spells, so discussing the most powerful cantrip is kind of like discussing the spiciest type of milk. That said, there are some potent cantrips that are definitely reliable in just about any given situation. My honorable mention may surprise people, but I have to go with Eldritch Blast. Let me be clear. In terms of raw, destructive power, Eldritch Blast is definitely the best cantrip, especially as a warlock with invocations that can buff it up. That said, it doesn't carry much more power than a longbow, even with the invocations included. It is, by far, the best of the attack cantrips in 5e, but not by such a huge margin that justifies me saying it is the best cantrip in the game, in my opinion. To me, the most powerful cantrip in 5th edition isn't a damage one at all, but rather Message. Message allows you to communicate essentially telepathically to one of your party members at a time and allows them to respond. In my experience, Message has been the single most impactful cantrip any character has taken, due entirely to the utility it provides. Being able to speak to your party from 120 feet away while also preventing anyone else from being able to hear what you say can be a pretty huge boon in pretty much any setting. There isn't much else to say about this one because it is really that simple. Communication is a huge part of D&D, and Message opens up lines of communication that don't really exist outside of magic items and leveled spells, and that makes for a very, very valuable cantrip. The first level spells are amazing, honestly. This is absolutely one of the most potent level of spells due in large part to the variety this level contains. Tons of damage spells as well as healing and utility. First level spells are the first glimpse into the extremely potent spellcasting that will come later in the game, which made deciding on an honorable mention very difficult, honestly, because there are a crap ton of very useful spells here, but after much consideration, I decided on Shield. A +5 bonus to AC as a reaction that lasts until the beginning of your next turn is just a lifesaver. I couldn't tell you the number of times I've watched Shield save the life of someone's character. A massive swing down on a squishy caster by some huge monster could change the course of the entire battle, and then suddenly the caster's AC is 21 for a round and nobody can hit them. That is no joke and definitely deserves a mention here. Speaking of lifesavers, my number one level 1 spell is probably pretty obvious to most people who've played 5e before, Healing Word. This is arguably just the most powerful spell in the game in terms of bang for your buck. Healing Word is the kind of spell that isn't powerful because of the numbers you roll, but rather the way it takes advantage of the death save system in 5e. You're not healing a huge amount, but any amount matters when it comes down to death saves, and Healing Word is just the easiest, quickest heal in the game. A bonus action heal from 60 feet away will be able to bring a character up from death saves more consistently than any other spell in the game at any level, really. So I think it would be a bit of a travesty not to put this one at the very top of the first level spells. Second level spells tend to focus a bit more on utility across the board, though there are some damage spells that in my opinion aren't too crazy effective with just a couple exceptions. The utility spells are definitely quite strong though, which made it pretty difficult once again to pick some of my favorites. For my honorable mention, it was a bit of a toss-up between Mirror Image and Misty Step, but I had to go with Misty Step for this one. My reasoning is that Misty Step stays relevant throughout the entire game. Mirror Image is an incredible spell early on that will allow squishy casters to avoid a good number of hits a lot of the time. But once you start fighting stuff that has Blind Sight, True Sight, Tremor Sense, or whatever else there is that can suddenly see through illusions, it is entirely useless. Misty Step, however, stays relevant because it allows you to blink away from an enemy and reposition yourself safely, and later in the game, second level spell slots are pretty easy to use. It is a spell that you'll get a lot of value out of in pretty much any situation at any point in the game, so I feel like it has to be near the top. The best second level spell, however, is an exception to what I said earlier about there not being great damage spells. Spiritual Weapon is just flat out one of the best damage spells in the game. It's not like it hits like a truck or anything, but this spell is just the dream recipe for a consistent damage spell that every single caster would want. Bonus action casting time, 60-foot range, you can attack with it right away after casting it, it can move as a part of its bonus action, and the kicker is that it's not concentration. It is truly just everything you want in a damage spell. It essentially allows you to attack every turn, but use your action for whatever you want otherwise. Also, a small interaction to take into account, the spell is a melee spell attack. That means that if your target is paralyzed or unconscious, it benefits from the automatic critical hit just like a melee weapon attack would, but you can do it from a range. It's just better than a normal attack in every single way. Now, unfortunately, it's only available to clerics, but there are a few ways to get it as another class, like playing a bard. But regardless, if we are talking about raw strength, this spell certainly takes the cake for second level spells. And then we get to third level. Man, this one was hard. Gaining third level spells, in my opinion, is the sharpest spike in power that any caster will get in 5e. The mix of wildly potent utility and damage spells you gain access to at this level is just absolutely game-changing, and it's really the first moment where you feel like a truly powerful caster. But I looked through all the spells for a while and picked apart the ones that I really liked, and eventually did settle on a couple that have to win this contest. My honorable mention is Revivify. It was very difficult to justify not putting this one in the top 2 spells. Revivify can literally bring a character back to life. It succeeds where Healing Word fails. It's that reassuring spell that you have in your back pocket at all times for when a combat goes very, very wrong. This is the very first spell you gain access to that can bring a player character back from the dead, which means you've reached a point in the game when your GM could be throwing out much deadlier encounters than before without fear of permanently destroying a player character. This is the spell that allows you to die and go through that pretty scary experience in game, only to be brought back and reunited with your party once again. If I could have 3 or 4 honorable mentions, I would, so I'm just gonna list them real quick. Fly, Aura of Vitality, Mass Healing Word, Hypnotic Pattern, Haste, Lehman's Tiny Hut. I mean, come on, there are so many ridiculously helpful spells at this level, but anyway, the best one of all of them just has to be Fireball. You want to talk about a spell that can single-handedly end an encounter in a moment? This is the one to do it. A 20-foot radius sphere of 8d6 fire damage will absolutely nuke a group of monsters at this level. And there's just no other spell like it until later in the game. There really isn't much else to say about this one. It just does way more damage than it should at this level, which is totally fine, but it makes it pretty difficult to say it isn't the best third level spell in the game. 4th level is probably my least favorite spell level in the game, which makes sense as it is sandwiched in between 2 of the more powerful spikes for casters. It is definitely mostly focused on utility, as well as many summoning spells, but the most potent spells to me are definitely both utility focused. My honorable mention is Greater Invisibility. This is just such a powerful support spell when put in the right hands, and it's really easy to use well. Using this on a rogue is obviously great. A monk with 1,000,000 attacks at advantage will be awesome too, or just keeping one of your squishy casters invisible while they support the team will make for a pretty dang effective use of the spell. Nobody is going to put this to waste. However, the most powerful 4th level spell for my money has to be Polymorph. This one just offers way too many options to ignore. You can polymorph yourself or one of your teammates into a ball of hit points to soak damage. Need to fly or swim? Polymorph into something that can fly or breathe underwater. Need to take an enemy out of the fight? Try polymorphing them into a little creature. The fact that you can polymorph into a beast with the CR equal to your level is just hilariously strong. That is a giant ape at 7th level and a T-Rex at 8th. Go check those stat blocks and you'll see why that is so strong. Polymorph is definitely one of the best utility spells in the game, so I'd be hard-pressed to find another 4th level spell that belongs above it. The 5th level honorable mention is Hold Monster. Hold spells are very powerful because they are one of the few ways to apply the paralyzed condition, guaranteeing a critical strike from melee range. Hold Monster is the first time you're able to cast it on any type of creature, which obviously ups the potency of the spell quite a bit. Not to mention, at higher levels, you can cast it on multiple creatures, which could change the course of an encounter if the rolls go right. So not only does the spell temporarily take a creature out of a fight, it also allows for your damage dealers to apply some very big hits and potentially remove the creature from the fight permanently. The strongest 5th level spell, however, to me, is Cloud Kill. Cloud Kill is one of the best spells in the game at both disrupting a group of creatures while also dealing a heavy amount of damage. It heavily obscures an area which blinds any creature inside of it and then can potentially deal 5d8 damage to every creature inside it every turn. Cast that in the middle of a large group of creatures and they'll be flailing around blindly while also taking big chunks of damage if they can't get out in time. At this point in the game, this may not be an encounter-ending spell, but it can certainly change the tide of a fight. It is one of my personal favorites to use against my party as a GM because players never know what to do about it, and its raw power definitely sets it apart from the other 5th level spells. 6th level is where spells start to get just ridiculous. The damage numbers get incredibly high, the utility spells last a very long time, and overall, 6th level spells are definitely when you've reached the late game powerhouse level we know casters to be in 5e. My honorable mention for this level has to be one of the highest single target damage spells in the game, Disintegrate. So we acknowledge that 8d6 from Fireball is the lot at 3rd level, which means we must also acknowledge that 10d6 plus 40 is also a lot from Disintegrate. That is an average of 75 force damage from a single spell. If that hits, the target is going to be feeling very, very rough. That said, there is a weakness to the spell, which is why I had to keep it at an honorable mention. If they succeed the dex save, they take no damage. The spell just totally misses, which feels pretty bad when that happens. That said, when it hits, it will very nearly end a creature by itself, and that is no joke. The strongest spell at this level has to be Heal. Heal is an incredible spell because there's absolutely no variance. It is a guaranteed 70 points of healing every single time, as well as the removal of blindness, deafness, and any disease. If Disintegrate is strong with an average of 75 damage with a chance of failure, then Heal is absolutely broken with a guaranteed 70 points of healing with no chance of failure. If your Barbarian tank is getting low on health, you can just immediately reverse it with the spell, and there's not a dang thing an enemy can do about it other than try to counterspell it. 70 points of healing is an intimidating number because it can reverse so much progress in a fight, which is, again, why I like to use it against my players if the creatures they're fighting have access to healing magic. It is just flat out demoralizing. But when you're on the receiving end of the healing, it can honestly make you feel like you can take on the world, and that is a feeling deserving of the top spot for 5th level spells in and of itself. 7th level is another one where I was struggling to decide which ones were best. There are just so many spells at this point in the game that are absolutely game-changing in so many situations, but the honorable mention I had to settle on is Force Cage. I just love this spell so much. It literally locks creatures in a prison from which there is no escape unless they can magically teleport, and even then, they have to succeed on a charisma save to do it. The wildest part is that if a creature fits inside the space of the spell, there just isn't a save to avoid it. They're just trapped there. So even something with legendary resistance can't avoid this. You can take the boss out of the boss fight with this spell. And if you make it a box, they absolutely cannot participate in the fight without managing to escape it somehow. It can seriously change the tide of a fight, and the fact that it can't be dispelled makes this one a very potent and nearly unavoidable fork in the road for any GM's encounter. The strongest 7th level spell, in my opinion, however, is Simulchrum. What's better than a wizard with 7th level spells? 2 wizards with 7th level spells. This spell is expensive to cast and maintain, but by the time you're casting 7th level spells, you're probably not lacking for gold. And it is absolutely worth every penny to have because making a copy of yourself or one of your allies is ridiculously powerful. This isn't just an NPC with no PC abilities, it is an exact replica of a creature you choose, just with half the hit points. That means they have access to every spell, every feat, and every class feature that that creature has access to. Now, granted, they can't regain spell slots, but it's not like you can't make another one when the spells have been exhausted. Not to mention, as a later level wizard, there are a few spells you can cast at will. So if you make a Simulchrum at those later levels, they can also cast those spells without expending spell slots. Plus, they can use scrolls and magic items just like you, so outfitting them with that stuff makes them just as potent as another PC, even if they can't regain spell slots. Overall, this spell is basically just gaining another party member, which any GM will openly admit is one of the strongest boons that exists to boost a party's strength. 8th level has some powerhouse spells, but it is definitely focused on utility as well, since the next level of spells you get is obviously the most potent. My honorable mention here is Antipathy Sympathy, one of my favorite spells in the game, and frankly, a wildly underrated one in my opinion. This is a fantastic way to get a spread out encounter to tighten and group up if you use Sympathy, which is much stronger than Antipathy in my opinion, since you can make saving throws if you're 60 feet away or out of sight of the object you choose. You can make the chosen creature type attracted to pretty much anything you want, so it can be a player in your party or a rock under their feet. Whatever it is, every creature of that type will want to run towards it, unless they succeed, and even then, they're going to have to make the save every single turn. Once they fail, they can't make the save again until 24 hours have passed, or the targeted object deals damage, which won't be a problem if it's inanimate. So yeah, follow this up with a fireball or whatever, and you're sitting pretty in that fight. The strongest spell at 8th level, in my opinion, is Holy Aura, and it's pretty simple as to why. This is one of the best spells to protect your party that exists in the game by far. First of all, it applies to everyone within 30 feet of you when you cast the spell. So once you've cast it, your party can spread out as much as they want. It gives every creature disadvantage on attack rolls against them, as well as giving everyone affected advantage on every saving throw. And if you're fighting fiends or undead, they have a chance to be blinded anytime they do manage to hit an affected party. So yeah, this is obviously a very powerful support spell because it doubles the chance that every creature will miss against your party, and doubles the chance that your party will succeed on every save, which at this point in the game could be absolutely crucial. Support spells are huge in 5e, and this one is by far one of the best. And finally, we reach the 9th level. This is where spells just lose all semblance of balance and reason. This is where ridiculous things happen, where a spellcaster can change the course of a high-level encounter with a single casting of any of these spells. That said, some of them stand out above the rest, and it was very difficult to choose which ones stand out as the top 2, in my opinion, but my honorable mention here is going to be Invulnerability. I mean, what's not to like here? It is by far the simplest spell at 9th level, yet also one of the most ridiculous spells available. Simply being immune to all damage for 10 minutes is just insane. And it's not like you're gonna have to make concentration checks because you're not going to be taking any damage. The only way this spell goes down is if it is dispelled or you are incapacitated somehow. Basically, watch out for other high-level casters when you have this spell up. Otherwise, you're just straight up invincible for 10 minutes. So that's fun. And it may be too obvious, I'm not sure, but the most powerful spell at 9th level has to be Wish. My inner hipster wanted so badly for the spell not to be the most powerful one, but it just does everything. At base, you can cast any spell of 8th level or lower without any components. That is, all the resurrection spells, all the healing spells, every spell in the game without any components. That is already insane. But the given examples of additional potential effects include giving 10 creatures resistance to a particular damage type, immunity to a single spell or effect, or, restoring up to 20 creatures within range up to maximum HP and removing any effects that Greater Restoration would also remove. And that's not even mentioning the big paragraph at the bottom that essentially says that you can do anything with the spell that the GM will allow. Basically, Wish is just a spell that makes miracles happen. You alter reality with the spell, and no other spell in the game can quite do that, no matter what level it is. So I think this safely secures its spot at the very top of any spell list when it comes to powerful spells. Alright, those are my choices for the strongest spells in 5e at every level. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my rankings, and tell me some of your favorite spells in 5e. Please consider subscribing to the channel, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around.